I want to talk to you about emotions in a way that you probably never heard them talked about before. The one thing I want to say up front, and the thing this entire video rests on, is this. Emotions don't have an expiration date. They don't expire. They don't fade out. They don't quietly resolve themselves over time the way most people assume they do. If you didn't process it, you're still paying for it. Right now, while you're sitting here watching this video, your nervous system is running an open tab from things that have happened 10, 20, 30 years ago. Every emotion you choke down instead of feeling, every grief you skipped past, every rage you smiled through, every time you said, "I'm fine," while your chest was on fire, all of that went somewhere. It didn't just disappear, it got stored. And wherever it got stored, it started accruing interest. So here's the thesis for the next half hour. I want you to hold it in your mind the whole way through. Every unprocessed emotion becomes a line of credit your nervous system is silently paying interest on. And what most of us call our personality is often a collection of unpaid invoices. That's the frame. We're going to call it emotional debt. I'm Zach Scanapico. I coach high performers, driven professionals in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who built their careers on discipline and override, and who can feel that something underneath has shifted. A lot of what I see in that work is exactly what we're going to be talking about. Emotional debt that's been compounding for decades, paid for in symptoms people have learned to live with. In the next 25 minutes, I want to give you the biology of how this actually works inside your body. The 4 neurological things that happen when this debt accumulates. The specific ways most people unconsciously try to service the debt without ever paying it down, and what the way out actually looks like. Stay with me, this one matters. If you think you're just an impatient person, that's not a temperament you have. That's a bill you haven't paid. If you can't sit in silence, that's not a personal preference. That's the avoidance of a creditor somewhere. If you need to stay busy all the time, that's not because you're ambitious. It's a payment you're making on something. Let me give you the biology of this first, so it doesn't sound like a yoga retreat. When something emotionally significant happens in your life and your system doesn't get to complete its response to it, the charge of that emotion doesn't go away. It doesn't fade, it gets stored. It gets lodged in what neuroscientists call subcortical structures. Your amygdala, your insula, your brainstem, and critically, your body itself. The body is subcortical if you just look at the anatomy. But here's what most people miss, and this is the part I want you to really hear. They're not stored as memory, they're stored as a state. That's a massive difference. Memory is something you recall. A state is something you re-enter. And that's why somebody can be 45 years old sitting in a boardroom meeting and somebody raises their voice slightly and suddenly they're not 45 anymore. They're 7 years old and they don't know why their hands are shaking. That's not them remembering something. That's their nervous system replaying an incomplete response because it never got to finish. Here's how this actually works. When a threat or an emotionally significant event happens, your autonomic nervous system mobilizes a response. You've heard the list before. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. If the response completes, if you fight and you win, if you run and you escape, if you cry and somebody holds you, the charge dissipates. The system goes back to baseline. The event gets filed as resolved. Done. But if the response gets interrupted, if you can't fight because you're a child, if you can't run because the threat is happening inside your own home, if you can't cry because crying gets you punished in your house, the mobilization never completes, and the energy that got mobilized has to go somewhere. It locks into the body. Maybe it shows up as a tight shoulder, chronic jaw clench, or stomach problems you've been to 15 doctors about with no answer, or just a little baseline hum of anxiety that's been there so long you think it's just how you are. We call it personality, but it's just storage. This isn't new science. A researcher named Peter Levine developed an entire body of work called somatic experiencing decades ago that demonstrated this. Bessel van der Kolk has spent his career documenting exactly the same phenomenon. His work is the reason the phrase "the body keeps the score" is in the language at all. The body keeps the score. The body remembers what the mind has been told to forget. Here's the next layer that almost no one talks about. Your brain's primary job, more than anything else, is predicting what's going to happen next. So when an emotional event in your life goes unresolved, your brain doesn't just sit on it, it starts scanning constantly, trying to keep you safe. You might think it's doing that to heal. It's not. It's doing that to prevent. And it's built an architecture inside your brain to avoid certain things. Don't get close to people like that. Don't say things like that. Don't feel things like that. Don't end up in rooms like that. Over time, those tiny avoidances become the entire shape of your life. So when somebody tells you to step out of your comfort zone, I want you to understand something. You don't actually have a comfort zone. What you call your comfort zone is the perimeter your nervous system has drawn around the things it never finished processing. That's it. That's your comfort zone. And what actually happens to debt over time? It compounds. This isn't a metaphor anymore. This is the actual math your body is doing. And there are 4 things that happen neurologically when emotional debt starts to accumulate. I promise you biology. Now here it is. Thing number 1, your amygdala becomes hypersensitized. Your amygdala is your brain's threat detection center. It's a big part of how you experience emotion, especially fear, anger, and alarm. When emotional debt accumulates, the amygdala doesn't stay calibrated. The threshold for activation drops. It takes less and less to set you off. Things that you used to handle without flinching now feel disproportionate. Somebody's tone of voice is slightly off, and your whole day is wrecked. Criticism that you would have brushed off at 30 lands like a slap at 50. A piece of feedback in the meeting puts you on edge for hours. And the story most people tell themselves about this is, I'm getting weaker. I used to be tougher than this. You're not getting weaker, you're accumulating interest. And that's all that's happening. Thing number 2, your prefrontal cortex starts losing ground. The prefrontal cortex is your executive function, planning, reasoning, impulse control, perspective, the part of you that thinks before it reacts. Chronic emotional activation literally reduces your prefrontal cortex engagement. The amygdala, the threat center, starts running more and more of the show. So you become more reactive, less reflective, more impulsive, less patient. You used to be the steady one in the meeting. Now you're snapping at your kids over things that don't matter. And you don't recognize the version of yourself doing it. You're not losing your edge. You're paying compound interest on a debt you didn't know you had. Thing number 3, your HPA axis stays activated. HPA stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's the technical name for your stress response system. When emotional debt accumulates, your cortisol stays elevated. Not in a crisis way, in a background hum way. A low grade, all day, every day version that you stop being able to feel because it never turns off. Chronically elevated cortisol does specific damage. The thing it shuts down is immune function. The second is the architecture of your sleep, the depth, the quality, the way your body repairs itself overnight. The third is your ability to consolidate memories. The fourth is increased visceral fat storage, which sets off a cascade that scientists have started calling cellular aging. That's a polite term for the rate at which you are dying. When emotional debt accumulates, it doesn't just make you feel off, it ages you. It makes you sick, and it likely shortens your life at roughly the same rate as a long-term smoking habit. That's your body paying the bill. Thing number 4, the debt starts recruiting. This is where it gets the most uncomfortable, so stay with me. Unprocessed emotion doesn't stay isolated. It starts pulling other parts of your life into the payment plan. It needs co-signers on the loan. It needs more bandwidth to keep servicing the bill. So your relationships become servicing agreements. Your career becomes a distraction strategy. Your habits become interest payments. Your identity becomes the collateral. Everything in your life starts organizing around the debt. And from the outside, even in the mirror, it just looks like, well, that's me. That's just how I am. That's just my personality. It's not. That is the nervous system drowning in compound interest and building an entire life around it, staying one payment ahead of default. So here's the question. If emotional debt is compounding and most of us never learned how to actually pay it down, what is everybody doing? We're servicing it. And debt servicing has one defining feature. It never reduces what you owe. It just keeps you from defaulting today. There are 4 ways human beings service emotional debt. I want you to listen to all 4 and see which ones you recognize. Service strategy number 1, numbing. This is the most common payment plan on earth. Some kind of anesthetic for the life you're inside of. Alcohol, cannabis, endless scrolling, food, shopping, binge watching, pornography, whatever your particular flavor is. If you're really honest about it, most of us are not doing those things because we deeply enjoy them. We're doing them because feeling nothing is cheaper than feeling everything we owe. And the reason the numbing is so hard to stop isn't that you lack discipline, it's that numbing works short term. It does what it's supposed to do. It keeps the bill collector away for one more night. Everybody thinks if I just had more discipline, I could stop drinking. I could stop scrolling. I could stop reaching for whatever I reach for. It's not a discipline problem. It's a successful short-term debt management strategy. And the debt is patient. Like every debt, it just waits. It waits for the vacation you can't enjoy, the retirement you'll never sit still in, the weekend that fills you with dread instead of rest. That's the bill coming due. Service strategy number 2, performing, the second most common. These are the people who become the funniest person in the room, the most charming, the most helpful, the caretaker, the over-deliverer, the agreeable one, the one who's always fine. When you see big, consistent performance, that's debt servicing, almost always. And I want you to start watching for this, not just in your own life, but in everyone around you. Once you can see the shape of debt servicing, you start to see it everywhere, in your colleagues, in your family, in the people you love most. Everyone is servicing something. Service strategy number 3, loneliness. This one is high interest, 27% APR loneliness. And it's not the kind of loneliness where nobody is around. That's a different thing. This is the loneliness where everyone's around you and no one actually knows you. Not one person knows what you actually carry. Not one person knows what you would say if you were honest. Not one person sees the version of you that exists when no one is performing for anyone. That's the most expensive loneliness a human being can experience. And most of high-functioning adults are paying it without ever naming it. Service strategy number 4, relational overfunctioning. This is the one most people mistake for love. The person who can't stop giving in their relationships, who anticipates every need before it's spoken, who sacrifices, who bends over backwards, who makes themselves indispensable. They genuinely think it's love. Look at how much I'm willing to do for the people I care about. It's not only about love, it's debt servicing. The unconscious math is, if I make myself necessary enough, no one can leave me. If I anticipate every need, I never have to face the abandonment I'm secretly terrified of. And here's the deepest layer of this one, the painful one. You are attracting into your life what you consciously want. You are attracting what your nervous system recognizes. If love came with anxiety in your childhood, you're going to feel most alive around people who make you anxious. If closeness came with control, you're going to feel safe with people who dominate you. If affection came with conditions, you're going to grow up convinced that the only love that's real is the kind that you have to earn. You will walk past the person who offers you peace, not because you don't want peace, but because peace doesn't feel like home. That's the debt running your relationships from underneath. Now, I want to draw an important distinction here because most people get this wrong and it keeps them stuck for years. Trauma is an event, something specific, something that breaks through your system's capacity to cope and finalize a response. You can name it, you can point to it, A clinician can give you a diagnostic code. Emotional debt is not trauma. Emotional debt is an accumulation. It's 1,000 small moments, each one too small to call trauma. Each one not big enough to seem like it would matter 20 years later. You needed to be angry and you learned anger wasn't safe. You needed to grieve at 6 years old and somebody told you to stay strong. You needed to be a child and someone made you an adult. Each of these moments would not show up on any mental health diagnostic instrument. None of them would qualify as trauma in a clinical sense, but every single one of them created debt. And the part that messes with people the most, emotional debt can do more damage to a life than diagnosable trauma, because trauma at least gets named. People know to look at it. The 1,000 small moments don't get named. They just get lived inside. I want to say something here that matters. I'm not telling you any of this so you can blame your parents. They were almost certainly in debt themselves, massively, and they couldn't give you something they never received. So they passed the balance of their debt forward without knowing it. And now it's sitting in your account. That's not blame. That's just the math of how debt moves through generations. And here's a piece of biology you should know about. Financial systems have a specific moment when payments can no longer cover the interest and the structure collapses. Bankruptcy, emotional systems have the exact same threshold. When you hit it, the result is predictable: a breakdown, a health crisis, an identity collapse. Sometimes all three of those happen at the same time. People call it a midlife crisis or a burnout or sudden depression that came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was always coming. The math was always running. The bill just finally came due. Before I get to the way out, I want to share something briefly about my own life, because I don't want to teach you from a hypothetical place. I had carried a lot of emotional debt for a long time, years, most of my adult life, honestly. When I started studying this kind of work, the somatic stuff, the nervous system work, the actual healing practices, I made progress. I'd do a session here and there, I'd feel some relief, some debt would get paid down. It felt good, but I wasn't really getting to the depth of what was still in there. It was sporadic. There was no real rhythm to it. I was paying the minimum on the credit card, basically enough to keep things from collapsing, not enough to actually pay it off. What changed wasn't the techniques. What changed was that I started doing this work consistently, every single day, as part of my actual life, not as something I'd get to when I had time. And after a long stretch of that, and I want to be honest, this took real time. This was not a weekend retreat. There was a shift. It actually felt like the debt got paid off. And I don't say that lightly. There was a before and an after, a different felt sense of what it was like inside my body. That was a life-changing experience. But here's the part nobody tells you about. It doesn't end there, because we're alive. Things keep happening. Life keeps generating new debt. So I kept the practices and the things going, not to dig out anymore, but to stay current, to keep the slate clean, to process whatever new thing comes through before it has a chance to compound. That's what the work actually is. Pay it down and then keep it paid. I tell you this so you don't think I'm describing some mystical thing that happens to other people. This is something a regular person can do. It just requires the right approach and consistency. So how do you actually pay this debt down? I want to start by telling you what doesn't work. You don't think your way out of emotional debt. I want to be very, very direct about this. You will never think your way out of it. You can read every book. You can analyze your childhood for 10 years. You can journal until your hand cramps. You can have the most articulate, self-aware understanding of your patterns that any human being has ever had. The debt will still be there. And here's why. The debt isn't stored in the part of you that thinks. It's stored in the body, in the subcortical structures, in tissue, in fascia, in the held tension of muscles that have been gripping something for 30 years. The mind cannot reach those structures directly. That's not how the architecture is built. You have to feel your way out. But here's the catch. And this is what most somatic work doesn't fully address. You can't feel your way out from inside the activation. If your body is still gripping the thing, still tense, still locked, still defendable, you cannot feel through it. You'll just re-traumatize yourself. It's like trying to swim faster to stop being wet. Before anything else can happen, the body has to actually open. That's the piece almost everybody misses. A lot of people teach perspective shift as the active ingredient in healing, and I think they're partially right. When you can move your vantage point from inside the story to outside, even by an inch, things start to move. But here's what's missing from that frame. You cannot get a perspective on something your body is still actively holding. Body has to release first. The grip has to soften. The tissue has to open. Once that happens, what's been stored has somewhere to go. It can rise to the surface to be felt and processed and let go. The perspective shift becomes possible because the body opened, not the other way around. That's the whole sequence. Open the body, let what's there to surface. Sit with it until it moves through. Then the perspective happens on its own. So with that in mind, here's what the actual process looks like. 6 steps. Step 1, see the payments. The first move is going from unconscious to conscious. Most people in emotional debt don't know they're in debt. They think they're just tired or stressed or getting older, or that life is what life is supposed to feel like. The first shift is learning to recognize the patterns. If you react disproportionately to small things, that's debt. If you avoid specific feelings with predictable behaviors, that's debt. If rest feels dangerous, that's debt. If you can't be alone in silence without reaching for something, that's debt. If your body has chronic tension with no medical explanation, that's debt. You don't have to remember the original event. You don't even have to know what happened. You can have amnesia for your entire childhood and still do this work. You just have to start seeing the payments you're making in the present. That's the first shift. From inside the pattern to slightly above it. Even an inch above is enough to start. Step 2, name your debt servicing strategy. Everybody has a go-to. Most people have 2 or 3. What's yours? Numbing, overworking, performing, controlling, helping, self-medicating, withdrawing, whatever it is, don't judge it. Don't try to stop it. The good news is you don't even have to stop it yet. You just have to name it, because naming, it creates distance between you and the behavior. This is critical for how the brain works. Distance is where choice lives. As long as you're inside the behavior, you don't have a choice. The behavior is just who you are. The moment you can see it from a slight remove, you start to have options that didn't exist before. You'll start noticing yourself reaching for the thing. You'll feel a little stutter before you do it. That stutter is the work happening. Step 3, open the body. This is the piece almost nobody talks about, and it's the precondition for everything else. The body has to be released. The chronic tension has to soften. The grip your tissue has been holding for years or decades has to start to let go. There are specific methods for doing this. Practices that can actually open the body in the way that creates the conditions for emotional debt to move. They've existed for thousands of years in different forms, across different lineages. There are more modern versions of them too. I'm not going to walk through the exact mechanisms in this video. That's a deeper rabbit hole than we have time for today. What I want you to understand at this level is this. You cannot skip this step. You cannot meditate around it. You cannot think your way through it. The body has to be physically worked with, and it has to happen consistently. Not once, not at a weekend retreat that gives you a temporary opening and then closes back up by Tuesday. Daily repetition until the body's baseline state actually changes. Step 4, let what surfaces actually surface. Here's what happened when the body starts to open. You don't have to dig. The held material rises on its own. That's a critical point. A lot of people think that emotional work is about excavating, going looking for the buried thing, naming it, processing it intellectually. That's mostly wrong. When the body has the conditions to release, what's been stored comes to the surface on its own. Your job at this point is not to dig, your job is to let it come and then to feel it all the way through, not to escape it, not to numb it, not to journal it into a tidy story, just to let it move through you the way it would have moved through you the first time if you'd been allowed to feel it then. This is where shaking happens, where unexpected crying happens, where rage moves through the body and out, where grief that's been waiting 30 years finally gets its moment. This is actually paying down the debt right here. This is where the principal gets retired. Step 5, stay consistent. Here's the part that determines whether this works for you or whether it doesn't. The work has to be consistent. The reason that people never actually pay down their debt isn't that they don't have access to good methods. It's that they do the work sporadically. They open the body up once a month. They feel something move through them at a retreat, and then they go home and don't touch it for 90 days. Sporadic work pays the minimum. It buys relief, but not freedom. Consistent work done at a high enough frequency that the system doesn't actually have time to retighten between sessions actually changes your baseline. Layer by layer, the body keeps opening up more. More material surfaces, more gets moved through, more gets released. It's not fast, it's not glamorous. It's chipping away day after day after day. But here's what happens if you do it. At some point, there's a shift. Most people who do this work consistently describe the same thing. There's a before and an after. A point where the felt sense of being inside their body actually changes. Where the chronic background hum that they thought was just who they were quiets down. Where the debt actually feels paid off. It's a real moment. It's not subtle. People don't have to wonder if it happened. That's the unlock. And then, and this is important, you don't stop. Because life keeps generating new debt. New experiences come in. Hard things happen. The world doesn't stop. But once the slate is clean, all you have to do is maintain it. Process the new stuff as it comes before it has a chance to compound. Keep the body open. Keep the things going. The work transitions from digging out to staying current. That's what a healthy nervous system actually looks like. Step 6, get a witness. This is the deepest step and the most overlooked. Most of your emotional debt was created in isolation. Even if there were people around you when those 1,000 small moments happened, you were alone with those moments internally. The thing was too big for you and there was no one inside it with you. A big part of what your nervous system is still holding on to isn't just emotional, it's aloneness. Aloneness all by itself is debt. So a lot of the discharge process actually requires a witness. Not someone to fix anything, not an active giver, not somebody who's going to reframe your pain into a tidy lesson. A witness. Someone who can sit with you while something is moving through your body and not try to make it stop. Not flinch, not interpret, not apply pressure, just stay present. The reason this matters is that being witnessed gives you a perspective you genuinely cannot generate by yourself. When someone is holding space for you, really holding it without flinching, without fixing, they become a kind of mirror. And that mirror, you can finally see what's been moving through you without being consumed by it. It's the thing most of us needed at age 5 and didn't get. Getting it now at 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, it doesn't undo what happened, but it completes something that's been waiting to finish for a long, long time. This is also why almost no one resolves serious emotional debt purely on their own. There's a piece that requires presence, another nervous system, regulated, stable, and to be there with you. That's what makes the deep stuff actually finish. So let me bring this all back together. Emotions don't have an expiration date. The ones that you don't get to fully feel, they didn't go anywhere. They got stored. They're still there, and they've been silently accruing interest for years or decades, paid for in tight shoulders or short tempers and chronic anxiety and whatever else you've been calling just my personality. What you call your personality is often just a collection of unpaid invoices. The biology is real. The amygdala becomes hypersensitized. The prefrontal cortex loses ground. The HPA axis stays elevated. The debt starts recruiting other systems, your career, your relationship, your habits, into the payment plan. Most people service the debt for the rest of their lives. Numbing, performing, loneliness, overfunctioning. Each strategy keeps default at bay for one more day and never reduces the principal. The way out is not overthinking, it's not insight, it's not analysis. The way out is the body. Open the body, let what's been stored to rise to the surface. Sit with it until it moves through. Stay consistent until the baseline actually changes. Get a witness for the parts that need one. That's the work. I didn't make this video to fix you. I don't think you're broken. I made this video because almost every conversation I have with people I work with eventually ends up in this territory, and most of them have never had anyone explain it like this. You didn't choose your debt. Nobody opens up a line of emotional credit on purpose. It got opened for you by circumstances that you didn't control at an age when you couldn't understand what was happening. And you've been making payments on it ever since. The tight smiles, the sleepless nights, the relationship that collapsed and you still don't know why. That's a system doing its best with what it was given. The first move isn't to fix any of it. The first move is just to see it, to shift the vantage point even by an inch. Because once you see the shape of the debt, you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking, what do I owe? And that's when everything starts. I'll see you in the next one.